We are live with breaking news from Austin, Texas. And of course, you know that everybody is talking about the bird flu. It is making headlines left and right. And people are concerned for their own health and the possibility of a pandemic. The AVMA, the American Veterinary Medical Association, is holding its conference in Austin, Texas right now. And the issue of the birds that are killed as a result of bird flu is taking center stage. Now, according to the New York Times, since February of 2022, more than 82 million farm birds have been culled, which is a nice way of saying killed. And you are looking at an animal used in an experiment for something called VSD, and that is causing a lot of controversy. So we're going to go straight out to Dr. Crystal Heath. Dr. Crystal Heath is a veterinarian, and she is there live at the conference. She is one of the critics of what's called ventilation shutdown, a mass killing of animals in a controversial way. I want to go straight out to you. Crystal, you're there at the conference. Tell us, in your words, what's happening?
Well, they just had their House of Delegates meeting and they voted on their new Principles of Veterinary Medical Ethics, which states that depopulation is considered an ethical veterinary practice, which is a highly controversial thing to say, especially given that killing birds en masse via heat stroke is one of the methods that the guidelines on depopulation says can be used. And this method has led many companies to receive millions of dollars in bailout money, our money, after they've killed their birds this way. And these are billion-dollar corporations that have failed to put plans in place to end the lives of their animals in less cruel ways. So that's the situation. Now the AVMA has codified it as an ethical practice. And only one House of Delegates member was willing to speak up about this and voice her concerns about this. This was Martha Smith Blackmore. She tried to say something. They said she was out of order. They were only accepting comments on the amendments, not the overall principles of veterinary medical ethics. So they called her out of order. She wasn't allowed to talk. And then at the end, she did get 3.5 minutes to say her piece about it. And she criticized the practice and the way that we produce food now. So that's where we're at now.
As a matter of fact, there's something on LinkedIn that says it is essentially summarizing what she said. And I just want to read a couple of lines. We find ourselves in a paradox in our current animal agriculture paradigm. The intensity of these methods prevents us from guaranteeing a humane death for every animal under circumstances that can be anticipated. This perfect storm conditions periodically require the, quote, necessary evil of depopulation, but it is a human-made storm. Animal agriculture, so intensive, we cannot ensure humane deaths for each animal in all circumstances, must be considered unethical in and of itself. So I want to play some well, first of all, what was the reaction in the room when that was essentially read by that one person who seemed to be dissenting?
It was silence. I was the only one in the back of the room going, woohoo, and clapping. Nobody else that I heard clapped at all. And then it was like this tense, awkward silence for a long time until somebody said, does anybody have a joke? And I don't even remember what the joke was. I was just furiously typing up my notes. But yeah, I mean, it was like, wow, so dismissive of your colleague. Like, what kind of culture is this where, we're not even supportive of our colleagues who are, saying something very polite and professional. She wasn't like, an animal rights activist, virulently condemning the practice. It was a very compassionate, sympathetic thing to say, and something that all veterinarians should be striving for. Yeah, none of us want to hurt animals. And why aren't we making it easier to put systems in place where we don't have to hurt animals.
Well, I have this video. I'm showing this photo, but I actually have it as a video that I got off of your website, which is ouronor.org. And by the way, 2,000 veterinarians have signed a letter essentially saying we do not approve of ventilation shutdown. What are we watching here with this chicken?
This is one chicken that was found at a facility that used ventilation shutdown. And she actually is a hen that survived ventilation shutdown, and she was found by the activists who were investigating that facility. And that's what it looks like to be a survivor of ventilation shutdown. It's tragic.
Tell us again, what is ventilation shutdown and what is VSD plus?
VSD plus, ventilation shutdown plus, they seal up barns, pump in heat until the animals inside die after many of hours of heat stroke. And that's the method that they use to kill these animals when there are emergencies, or most commonly recently, the highly pathogenic avian influenza outbreak. Now, 97 million birds have been killed in the United States to stop the spread of highly pathogenic avian influenza. A lot of them are killed by ventilation shutdown. It's usually the largest facilities, the ones, ironically, who can afford to put plans in place to use less cruel methods. I mean, we would not want birds to be killed at all needlessly. I mean, and many of these birds are healthy too. We're just killing them to stop the spread, to prevent this virus from spreading further.
I just want to also point out again, this is bird flu. Everybody's talking about it. I want to go to this photo here. You're at the AVMA conference that's going on right now, but you have supplied us with this photo. This is something I got off your website, ouronor.org. What is happening here? Apparently, this photo was obtained through a Freedom of Information Act.
Yes, this is a photo of a bird inside a box at a university, a public research university. This was the study used to legitimize ventilation shutdown as a method. This study was paid for by an ag association and industry trade group at a industry-funded public research university. And this study was used by the AVMA guidelines on depopulation as a reason that this method should be legitimized. This then allows the USDA to give money back to these corporations that kill their animals this way.
In terms of what's happening to this particular bird, this bird is put in a container, and then you see the cords,
yeah.
The heat is turned up, and basically the animal is baked to death.
Yeah, and they time how long it takes for that bird to die. And they're watching the heart rate and temperature and everything. And there's videos of this. You can go on and see all of the footage, hours of footage of these birds dying in these boxes. It's horrifying.
Okay, so on your website, it says ventilation shutdown is a brutal, painful method of animal depopulation. These mass killings deviate from normal slaughterhouse procedures and are now being used in the pork and poultry industry. Just to recap, this is the resolution today that you're saying was just passed, and it's resolution number 8. Revised Principles of Veterinary Medical Ethics. This is the AVMA, the American Veterinary Medical Association. It says, resolve that the American Veterinary Medical Association House of Delegates adopt the principles of veterinary medicine ethics as found in Attachment 1 that will supersede the current PVME. In Attachment 1, it says, depopulation of animals is an ethical veterinary procedure when the AVMA guidelines for the depopulation of animals is followed. Now, we invite the AVMA on anytime to offer their explanation of what this means. We would love to dialogue with them. You were in the room when the vote was taken. What is your analysis of what that means?
I mean, it's kind of, I think of medical doctors who the American Medical Association does not condone the death penalty, and they don't think doctors should have any part in capital punishment. And it's really interesting how we've gotten ourselves into this position as veterinarians, where our patients don't have rights, they don't have protections, they're considered property. And so now we are asked to legitimize and condone the most horrifying treatment of animals done for economic purposes, because these corporations did not put plans in place to use less cruel methods. And we're just supposed to say that this is okay and this is ethical. And I think that that's not appropriate. We should be doing everything we can as a profession to stop this from being allowed to continue. And doing it with a sense of urgency. Like the AVMA should be speaking out every day, saying, encouraging corporations to put plans in place to do this in less cruel ways, and ideally transition to slaughterless forms of protein production instead of continuing to rely on slaughter-based methods of protein production.
And didn't the woman who spoke in opposition mention that?
Yeah.
According to what she wrote that's appearing on LinkedIn, she said that we should be promoting cell-based meat and other forms, because what she's saying essentially, if I interpret it, and I invite her on anytime to disagree or elaborate, is that our food system has become untenable. Our food system of killing globally more than 80 billion animals every year, millions that have died even during this conversation that's happened just for a few minutes, that there's no way to do the right thing at this point, but that we shouldn't condone a killing of animals that, again, as you describe it, requires them to be baked alive. And according to the New York Times wrote an article about this, and you were very much quoted in that article. And the headline is "A Cruel Way to Control Bird Flu. Poultry giants cull and cash in. Big poultry farms have received millions of dollars for their losses. Animal welfare groups contend that aid reinforces inhumane culling of birds exposed to the virus." Now, again, more than 2,000 veterinarians have signed onto Veterinarians Against Ventilation Shutdown. According to this New York Times article, last year, the Department of Agriculture paid poultry producers more than $500 million for the turkeys, chickens, and egg-laying hens they were forced to kill, or they felt forced to kill, after the flu strain H5N1 was detected on their farms. So it's not just you saying it. I mean, the New York Times, the newspaper of record, did an entire article where you were extensively quoted, Crystal.
Yeah, and it's now, they said $500 million. Now it's up to past $1 billion that they have bailed out these companies. And I grew up in a rural area. I was in 4-H, and we learned that you had a responsibility for the animals that you were caring for. You had to ensure that they had food, water, shelter, and a quick and painless death. And if you couldn't do that, like, that was looked upon as very poorly. I mean, and just historically, that you were not a good steward of your animals if you could not ensure that they had a quick and painless death. But now the numbers we're dealing with now, producers created these situations where they have thousands and thousands of animals in these buildings, but they never put plans in place to end their lives in a quick and less cruel way. I mean, I won't say humane, because there's no humane way to kill somebody who doesn't want to die, but at least less cruel. This should be against even if you think that it's okay to kill animals for food. Meat eaters should be against this. It goes against, it betrays all of our ethics. But especially given the technology now, there's just no need to produce protein this way.
Again, if you're just joining us, we are live from Austin, Texas. where the AVMA, the American Veterinary Medical Association, has reportedly just passed a resolution that some have interpreted as sort of, uh, well, it says it right here. Resolution number 8, okay? Resolve that the AVMA, House of Delegates, adopt the principles of veterinary medical ethics as found in Attachment 1 that will supersede the current VPME, which is Principles of Veterinary Medical Ethics. And it says right there in Amendment 1, depopulation of animals is an ethical veterinary procedure when the AVMA guidelines for the depopulation of animals is followed. What are those guidelines? So you're saying under no circumstances should any veterinary group co-sign or say it's ethical to mass kill animals, but they're saying that it's okay if the guidelines for depopulation of animals is followed. Does that include ventilation shutdown? I mean,
Yeah, that includes heat stroke based mass killing, ventilation shutdown. And, you could make an argument that depopulation might be ethical in emergency situations, in infectious disease outbreaks, sure, in our current system. But there are less cruel ways to do it than the ways that are currently listed as methods that producers can use. So that's the problem, I think, here is like they are saying it's ethical when heat stroke based mass killing is still allowed under the current guidelines.
Now, what you're saying is because the US government, us taxpayers, are forced to pay for this mass killing, it doesn't really provide any financial incentive for these massive corporations, some of the biggest meat corporations in the world, to come up with a less cruel method than baking these animals alive, is how you're describing it. So you're saying if the US government didn't refund essentially and pay for this, then they would be forced to come up with other solutions that could be less cruel. And let me say this, in the article in the New York Times, they also raised the question of whether we're overkilling in an attempt to mitigate or stop bird flu, because they cited a sanctuary that had bird flu, and because it wasn't food production, they kind of allowed them to do their thing, and some of the animals recovered and they went on, even though they had suffered a bout of bird flu. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, in that facility, only 26 of the 160 or so birds died. And this was, I'm familiar with that sanctuary. They do great work. And that situation, like those birds got a lot of care. When you have a building full of thousands of birds, and if avian influenza sweeps through, it's unlikely that you're going to be able to save any of them when they're in that sort of setting. But we do have influenza vaccines that are coming available. And now I think the industry will not accept vaccination because then that they would lose export markets. And because other countries don't want vaccinated birds because it's hard to detect. And they are also looking for a way to kind of exclude the United States from importing to their country. So they would love to use that excuse of like, oh, you vaccinate your birds, we're not going to accept you anymore, so that their own producers can, not have to compete with the really cheap meat and eggs from the United States. But
let me just say this. One person said, greetings all, hope everyone's surviving the heat wave, particularly the animals. I think that's a really good point because a lot of people are suffering from heat just walking out on the street. There's a heat dome over the United States. Well, if you're suffering, imagine if you're in a contained situation where you're put in there. Describe the process again, because honestly, I can't even believe that this exists. So, Crystal, describe the process again.
yeah, I mean, I love the heat. Here in Austin, it's 82 degrees, but it feels so hot outside because of the humidity. But yeah, I mean, what can you say? There's not much to it. Sealing up barns, pumping in heat until the birds die. And like I do hot yoga, for an hour when it's 110 degrees inside the yoga studio with, steam and everything, I can survive that. But when you're talking about hours and hours and these birds, imagine doing that until you die. Like, it is excruciating. And I mean, birds especially suffer in heat stroke because they're able to keep conscious for a long period of time while their bodies are dying. And heat stroke leads to organ failure, sloughing of the intestinal tract. It's a horrible, horrible, excruciating way to die.
And of the 2,000 veterinarians who signed this saying we shouldn't endorse this, it should be not recommended, where are they? Were any of them at this conference, or are you and the other person who spoke, who got up and gave that 3-minute speech, are you the only ones?
There's a couple of us. A friend of mine joined me who's a veterinarian, and the AVMA has 105,000 members. There's 130 or so thousand veterinarians in the United States. So about 30,000 veterinarians are not AVMA members, and they're not AVMA members because because of these policies that the AVMA has. And I encourage them, join the AVMA, get involved. And if enough of us join and voice our concerns and join these committees and join the House of Delegates, we can change things. I know I'm not going to be able to join the House of Delegates. I've been excluded from the Humane Ending Symposium. They barred me. I've been prevented from joining the American Association of Swine Vets, the American Association of Bovine Practitioners. They didn't let me come to the AVMA legislative fly-in. And even like their leadership said that they're doing that because they want to create a safe space for producers. And I think we need
producers of animal products.
These large, who are the companies that use ventilation shutdown? It's the wealthiest companies. We're talking about,
really
very
big
wealthy
ones.
people
Yes.
who need a safe space to discuss depopulation, and the veterinarians involved in depopulation. And I actually we have to be very clear, we are not attacking veterinarians. We're attacking the system, and we're attacking the AVMA policies. We're not attacking individual veterinarians involved in this. Veterinarians have committed suicide because of depopulation. There's a study that showed 10% of swine vets considered suicide because of this. I consider them like cult members. They're indoctrinated into the system through schooling. I mean, we have a distinguishing vernacular, a hierarchical structure, high exit costs if you speak out like I've experienced. It's a very
So you're saying you've been punished and ostracized because you've
Absolutely.
spoken out against this?
Yeah. And that's the discussion many vets have. They're scared to say anything about this. They think they're trying to be quiet and professional and work, the things on the inside, because they're worried if they come out too strong like me, they will be ostracized like me, and then they won't have a voice except for being a voice on the outside. I mean, I'm still a member. They still take my $400 or so membership payment. They allowed me to come to this convention. I paid my fee to come, but I was banned from the Humane Ending Symposium, which is sponsored by Cargill, the largest sorry, I broke the rules.
Well,
Anyway,
you're just saying that there's a company that sponsors, and we invite any company. We invite any company and the AVMA on to respond to any of this. In fact, I would love to dialogue with them.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, most people get into the veterinary world because they love animals. And this has got to be very, very difficult. Look, I'm a human being. I'm a taxpayer. Honestly, the idea that my tax dollars are going for this is really gut-wrenching. And, my understanding from reading your articles on your website, you maintain that the USDA and these large organizations kind of work together. Well, the USDA, they have a mandate to encourage meat and dairy consumption. So they're not necessarily, I mean, look, the worst things that have ever happened Okay, I remember years ago I covered a slaughterhouse undercover video that was horrific, and the USDA inspectors were right there through the whole thing. So we
Mhm.
can't count on the USDA, which has basically a conflict of interest inherently. It's supposed to promote meat
Yeah.
and dairy, and it has checkoff programs, etc. At the same time, it's supposed to inspect these places. We can't count on them. There is nobody looking out for these animals except an organization like yours. And you would think all veterinarians, but you're saying, and again, I invite the AVMA on anytime. You're saying that their resolution today basically, well, it opens the door for more ventilation shutdown.
Well, I don't think it actually does anything other than make them look bad. Like, it's not going to have any policy changes other than they'll be able to go to the media and say, look, the veterinarians have said this is an ethical veterinary practice. I think that just the only thing it serves to do is delegitimize our profession as caring advocates for animals, and calls that into question. I think any reasonable person realizes that a dog dying in a hot car is not something that we would condone. Why would we condone that with pigs or chickens? And it's ironic, like, if you look on the AVMA social media, they're talking all about, our pets and the hot weather and how to care for them. And it's like, well, what about the animals that, you're killing via heat stroke? And what are you doing? We should be doing more to tell producers the same way we're telling people who have dogs and cats to be careful of the heat. We should be telling producers, put plans in place to end the lives of your animals in less cruel ways, or better yet, try investing in slaughterless forms of protein production. And let's lobby the government to support meals that are plant-based, slaughter-free, veggies, fruits, seeds, nuts. Those should be meals that are easily accessible and affordable for everybody, everywhere. And if people can easily grab that as easily as they can grab a Big Mac. So,
Are there vegan options? Is this a vegan friendly event?
I was able to put vegan on my ticket. I have not looked at the food yet. I ate at another restaurant yesterday and today, so I haven't actually checked out what the options are, but they're usually pretty poor, honestly. And I would like the AVMA should have, slaughterless food everywhere. Like, they should be like, oh, if you want to, cater it for us, it should be slaughterless. But it's funny. I've heard people complain at like the other conventions that are veterinarian but more advocacy aligned. They don't offer any slaughter-based protein, and veterinarians have complained on social media about that, how they're not supporting animal agriculture by offering only slaughterless milks and not pregnancy-based milks. So,
Do you think you could convince the other veterinarians? 2,000 veterinarians against ventilation shutdown is a very sizable number.
yeah.
It certainly doesn't compare to the more than 105,000 who are represented totally by the AVMA. But is there a way to mobilize those 2,000 veterinarians who are opposed to this? I mean, when I look at this photo, I do have to say, and I'll say it as just a human being, I'm embarrassed to be a member of the human race. This says VSD Heat, and they are baking this innocent animal alive. And this is an example of what they're doing to millions of animals, tens of millions of animals. The New York Times reports since February 2022, more than 82 million farm birds have been culled. And the heat method is growing in popularity. Is it the most commonly used for mass killings of chickens?
I have to look at the numbers now, but I believe so. We are gathering that data. We get it from APHIS every month. So we get a spreadsheet with the methods used to kill the animals. And we're also getting the bailout money, and we're compiling that data. The APHIS has been a little bit late on the last few months of data. But we will total the numbers and let you know. But I do believe since most recently there have been really large facilities that have become infected, I think most likely they're using BSD on those facilities.
Wow. So, really, let's talk about the real issue. This is a consumer issue. If people are upset about this and they're still eating chickens or eggs, because a lot of the chickens killed were egg laying hens, then I think it's time to look in the mirror. Ultimately, if nobody ate chickens or eggs, we wouldn't be in this situation. Here, Daniel Levy says, thank you, Crystal, for the fantastic work you do, sticking up and fighting for the animals. Taxes forcing people to participate in murder and abuse is disgusting, unacceptable, and not applicable to my country. Well, I don't know what country you're in, because here in the United States, you and I and everybody who pays taxes are forced to subsidize mass killing of animals by baking them alive over a long period of time. And it's happening to chickens, but it's also happening to pigs. And I want to point out that pigs already live a completely miserable life. These are pig gestation crates where they're kept in crates the size of their bodies, never able to turn around. They can't even scratch themselves. They go mad. They break their teeth on the bars. This is a photo from a factory farm taken by an undercover investigator. I mean, they're already living these horrific lives. And then to be killed in this way, it's honestly, again, the only thing I can say is I'm embarrassed to be a member of the human race.
Yeah, and whether we're vegan, even if you're vegan, you're still paying for this, and that's the problem with the system. If you meet somebody who's like, oh, I only consume humane, local, whatever that is, we know that's not true, but many people think that they only consume humane, local, slaughter-based protein. But I would tell them, you're paying for this even if you only consume that so-called local, humane, slaughter-based protein. You are still paying for this with your tax dollars. If you're vegan, you're still paying for this. So this is why we need systemic change. It's not good enough just to change our diets, because we're still paying for this, even if we don't actually purchase these products. So and I think we could get even more people who aren't able to make that dietary change, aren't able to change their habits and match their habits to their behaviors. They should still be angry about this and contact their representatives, get involved, and ask that their money be redirected away from this and towards a slaughterless food system.
Breaking news, if you're just joining us, Dr. Crystal Heath, the head of Our Honor, is at the AVMA, Animal Veterinary Medical Association hearing, basically objecting to the use of ventilation shutdown, which is a method where animals in large numbers, they close off the area, they turn up. It's very similar to when you do termite extermination and they just bake them alive inside. And she, as a veterinarian, along with approximately 2,000 other veterinarians, are saying this is horrific and shouldn't be happening. And, taxpayers are forced to subsidize it, even though the money is going to some of the more profitable corporations on the planet, humongous meat and dairy and poultry corporations. And then that's only one aspect of the subsidies. There's also the Farm Bill. We've been covering the Farm Bill extensively here on Unchained TV. And, I want to play sound of a recent demonstration that occurred on Capitol Hill in opposition to continuing the animal agriculture bailouts. The Farm Bill is being decided right now, which will set the agenda for how much subsidies the meat and dairy industry will get for the next 5 years.
The Farm Bill is a product of dark money that comes from the meat, dairy, and egg industries who have bought your vote through millions of dollars in campaign contributions. You have betrayed hardworking Americans, but we refuse to pay for disease outbreaks that come from confining and slaughtering billions of animals. Not another penny for cooking millions of birds alive. It's time to fund a slaughter-free, plant-based food system. Stop the animal ag bailout.
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 Stop the animal ag bailout. Stop the animal ag bailout. Stop the animal ag bailout.
No, you didn't talk to that.
Stop the animal ag bailout.
So that happened in the nation's capital, and they were thrown out. In a similar demonstration, there were arrests. That is a similar.
Millions of dollars to bail out the chicken and egg industry, a $256 billion industry. Why are hardworking Americans paying to bail out this industry? It is absurd and immoral. You have betrayed hardworking constituents and Americans. It's time for a plant-based, safe future.
Committee will be in order. Committee will be in order. The committee will stand in recess until the police can restore order.
Now, Robert Grillo and one of the other protesters were arrested, and we interviewed him after he was arrested. He feels that it's very important to speak truth to power in a very, nonviolent, certainly, but vocal way, because polite letters and so very polite entreaties don't work at all. You're there at the AVMA conference in Austin, Texas. You're saying that you haven't really been allowed to participate that much because you've been flagged as somebody who is considered an animal activist. What's the big picture here?
Well, like, what's next? I think, we're going to keep trying to get media attention on this. I encourage activists to do what activists do, and I'm here to support them. I've already faced a lot of backlash, professional backlash for my positions and everything. So I'm quite scared to do anything like what Robert Grillo does. I don't want to end up losing my license. I don't want to, I actually had somebody the other day tell me basically she feared for my life because of the things that I was doing and saying. And we should not live in fear. I don't want to live my life afraid to say what I think. And I hope that other veterinarians don't. But, other veterinarians have told me, I have kids. I can't speak out because I don't want to lose my job. I don't want professional backlash, or they're worried that if they are too vocal that they won't be able to get a seat at the table and have a position. But, and then I hear lots of veterinarians who I quit the AVMA because I don't believe in them. Well, I encourage them, if you're thinking about quitting, don't quit, get kicked out. Do something outrageous and get kicked out, or try to get a seat at the table, try to change things. Don't just complain privately. Do it in op-eds, do it in letters to the editor, do it however you see fit, do it on your social media, take whatever action you feel like taking. But back to the Farm Bill, I will also I have to point this out too. The AVMA issued a letter in strong support of the language that would dismantle Prop 12 in the Farm Bill. And they said, informed by its members' unique scientific training and knowledge, the AVMA offers strong support for Section 12007 of the Farm, Food, and National Security Act of 2024, which protects veterinarians' freedom and flexibility to provide the best care for farm animals. So they supported that language that would overturn Prop 12, which is stunning because that's not based in science. That hurts public health, that hurts the animals. That is purely a position based on economic interests, and the economic interests of very, very wealthy companies.
That is truly shocking. And full disclosure, I personally collected signatures for Prop 12, which is a California proposition that would essentially ban pig meat from gestation crates. So I'm going to show you once again the gestation crates that pigs are kept in, the size of their bodies, unable to turn around and even scratch themselves. The good people of California overwhelmingly passed a proposition, Prop 12, to say that meat from these animals cannot be sold, even if it's raised in another state. if you are importing that to California, which is the 5th largest economy in the world and on track to become the 4th largest economy in the world, you cannot sell that here. The meat industry fought it all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court reaffirmed Prop 12. Now there's been efforts to destroy Prop 12 by putting in language in the Farm Bill. I mean, they're not giving up because, again, California is a very, very important part of the global economy as the 5th largest economy in the world, becoming the 4th. So far, though, Prop 12 is strong and it is surviving all these threats. But the idea that the AVMA is against Prop 12. And again, I invite the AVMA on. I would love to talk to them about this issue. You are invited on. If you're watching, we want to talk to you because I would like to get, I'd like to understand that. I'd like to see if that's how you see it. But I'm shocked.
Yeah.
How any veterinarian, if true, would want to support want to defeat a proposition that is designed to get animals out of these torture chambers called big gestation crates. I have no words. I honestly have no words right now.
I know, and other countries have banned it. And I think of like declawing cats too. Other countries have banned cat declawing. And our BMAs here in the United States, the AVMA has opposed those sorts of bans on declawing. They don't want any limitations on what veterinarians can do to animals. But this ultimately hurts veterinarians because it's hard to live in a world where our patients are property and don't have rights and protections. And when a client wants us to do something that we would consider unethical, they're just going to go to another veterinarian if we refuse. And then we're like, well, I guess I want to be this patient's vet, so I'm going to do it. So at least a veterinarian who would do it worse than me won't do it. And at least I'll have the opportunity to care for this animal, which isn't a position veterinarians should have to face. We shouldn't have to face these situations where we're asked to choose between two really bad alternatives.
So I want to jump in and say this woman says, please let me join your association. I am vegan and cannot sleep at night. I don't know that she is a veterinarian, but how do people get involved in our honor?
We should have like memberships because we need money to like keep going. But I haven't made an official pay this much a year and join us. We accept everybody to join us and be involved and be part of the conversation. So go to ouronor.org and you can sign up for our newsletter, reach out via email. You can reach out to me at cheath@ouronor.org or info@ouronor.org to connect with us. And we need help because, there's 2,000 veterinarians who are supportive of us and likely more veterinarians who are supportive of us, but veterinarians are very busy just taking care of patients. And they don't know about how to do advocacy and they don't have time to do advocacy. I'm very fortunate in my job. I work as a veterinarian, but I also do our honor and I am able to work a couple of days a week, spaying and neutering animals, and then I can spend my time doing this. And I don't have a family, I don't have kids, so this is my life, and this is what I love doing. But other veterinarians have families and practices to take care of, and employees and patients. And they're like, I don't have time to do this, but put my name on whatever you need me to put my name on. So we need to write op-eds for them. We need to get them quoted in the media. We just need to connect them to things that they can take action on. So that's what we hope to do.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up. Again, you were quoted in the New York Times. You really were. This article is very much about you and what you've had to say. So that's a huge win to have the paper of record. It's very hard to get any kind of mainstream media coverage on any kind of animal issue. So you've done an extraordinary job there. I would just urge you to keep us informed. Let us know what's happening. Bring us up to date because we want to make sure that your position is heard. And
Yeah.
again, we invite the AVMA on anytime. And while we're live, we have to tell you, please support animal rights media. We're the only ones covering this story right now. Yesterday, we were the only ones covering a vegan food giveaway in East LA, even though all the networks were called. We're often the only news organization covering these very important stories. And so we really want to urge you, please, to support Unchained TV. And to that end, I want to end with a little video.
So it's a vegan Netflix. Okay, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
I love Unchained TV.
Unchained TV. Your life will change. It's just that easy.
Unchained TV has all sorts of content for everybody.
Unchained TV changed my life.
Unchained TV is crushing it.
I love Unchained TV. Unchained TV is my go-to.
Unchained TV. Who knew?
Unchained, baby. Yay.
And you can download it right now on your phone. Thank you so much for joining us. And again, Dr. Crystal Heath of OurHonor.org. Check it out. Go to the website right now. Speak for these animals, because let's face it, the one thing we can all agree on is they cannot speak for themselves. Thank you so much for joining us. See you next time here on Unchained TV.